You know, it's really hard for me to go anywhere these days without being stopped. I'll go to the grocery store, and right there in the middle of the produce section, somebody's asking me, hey, Billy, what is your favorite NES games of all time? I have kind of answered this on our digibooks. In the months since I've written that, my list has kind of changed. Some games have dropped off, some have been put on. So I figured, why not? Why not do a definitive list in video form where I can talk about some of the games that I really, really like, and you guys can quit bugging me about what my favorite games of all time are. Let's get started. Now, there were tons of action platformers on the NES, but one of the best, in my opinion, enough to crack the top 20 anyway, is Power Blade. In my opinion, Power Blade kind of exemplifies that action platforming fun that you would have on the NES. You go through 6 stages in basically a Mega Man-like fashion where you can pick which stage you want to go to. I always liked that when they did that in games. Anyway, the point is you get to whoop some ass with the boomerang. That's the thing that kind of drew me to this game when I played it for the first time, is the boomerang. And for whatever reason, I like killing things with boomerangs. It's fun. You fling a boomerang and it comes back. And obviously you can power up that boomerang. You can throw 1 to 2 to 3 and then you get the Power Blade suit, and that's just awesome. You get to shoot a wave. It's just all around fun, and it was one of my favorite games that we used to rent back in the day. Wait, what's number 19? Oh. Rescue Rangers. So what I love about Rescue Rangers is, well, it's a Disney Capcom game, so you can't go wrong when you're talking about a Disney Capcom game. However, my memories with this one and why it gets on my list is, well, the nostalgia. Now, you're gonna find that a lot. It's gonna be a common occurrence on this list. A lot of the games that I like because they do have that nostalgia factor for me. Now, for this one, Chris actually got this one for Christmas. I remember him opening this up on Christmas, and I got excited because I knew that if he had the game, I'd get to play it too. I just have a thing for cartoon games, and what makes this one so special is the fact that you can play 2 players simultaneously. So me and Chris, needless to say, put hours and hours and hours into this game. Speaking of Chip and Dale, woo! Hey, I'm sorry, I won't do that no more. Next on the list is Zelda, The Legend of Zelda. Now, I know some of you are going to be surprised that this isn't higher on my list, and when it comes to top NES lists, you're always going to find Zelda at number 1 or at the very least number 2, but on my list, it's down here at 18. And why is that? Well, nostalgia, as I said, does factor in a lot on my list, and I just don't have any nostalgia for this game. Nobody I knew had this game growing up. We never rented it, and so while I do really like the game, it's on my top 20. It wasn't a game that I discovered until later on in my gaming career, which, you know, kind of sucks because I do wish that I had nostalgia for this game. I was mainly into action platformers, side-scrolling stuff. I never really gave this one a chance as a kid because I thought it was, you know, kind of a boring RPG type game, and I wasn't into that stuff. But looking back at it now, I wish I had played this game because I would have loved it. How could you not, as a kid, fall in love with the ability to just go off on this massive adventure with a sword and a shield and kill all these sorts of monsters, find all these items? That's what gaming really is about. You go off into these adventures, and The Legend of Zelda captured that perfectly. And as a kid growing up playing that game, you felt like you were on this amazing adventure. So I've been told. I can imagine what it would have been like since playing it now. I could put myself in that position. I just wish that I had played that as a kid, and if I had, I promise you it would be higher on my list. Ooh, now this one I have a love-hate relationship with. I love to hate it, but I love to play it, and that's Battletoads. My God, this game has given me more frustrations than any game I've ever played outside of one on my top 10 list, but we'll get to that one in another video. How could you just not get frustrated over this game? As many times as I've played it, I just continuously suck at it. I've never gotten good at it. I've gotten good at a bunch of other games that I initially started sucking at, but Battletoads, for whatever reason, has always and probably will always have my number. I do still like playing it. It's a fun game. I have nostalgia for it. I rented this game, and as soon as I got to that damn turbo tunnel, you know what I'm talking about, I just could not get past it, and it drove me crazy. I spent all weekend trying to get through that turbo tunnel, and I could never do it, even with the help of Nintendo Power. And you know if Nintendo Power can't help you, you're screwed. So I was screwed that weekend. I even got pink eye. I don't know if it was related, but I imagine that it was, because I was probably just so frustrated that it gave me pink eye because I was doing that. I don't know if that's how you get pink eye. It was probably the dirty kid from down the street. But anyway, Battletoads. The thing that I really like about Battletoads is just the variation of play style. All the different things that you can do, the different level designs. It's really creative. A lot of the NES games, it's the same stuff. Granted, a lot of it's fun, but you're doing the same stuff over and over and over and over and over and over and over from the beginning to the end. In Battletoads, they switched it up. And the graphics were amazing. And so I cannot not put it on my top list because I always play it despite always failing. All right, back to some cartoon games. I don't know what number we're on. 16. DuckTales. How would Ric Flair sing the DuckTales theme? He would be like, DuckTales, woo! That's bad. It's a perfect pick up and play game. You don't have to put hours into it. You can just play it for like 30 minutes, 20 minutes or whatever, and have a good time, and it's done. I know some people who, for whatever reason, they just can't get behind the whole pogo stick aspect of it, where you're bouncing on the pole. I've always loved that aspect. To me, it's a freaking blast. You're bouncing around and you're killing enemies just by bouncing. I've always loved that, but I guess there's just a small percentage of the population out there, maybe like 1%, that can't stand that or can't get behind it or don't understand it. And I feel for them because they can't get any enjoyment out of DuckTales. It's a quick game, it's an easy game, but it's a fun game. DuckTales. Ooh. He doesn't like you. I'll be careful. You'll be dead. Now this is a game that a lot of you probably won't have on your top list, and that's Star Wars, all right? I will wholeheartedly admit that this game is probably on my list because of nostalgia. Now, I'm not saying it's a bad game. I think it has its merits of being a good game. I mean, especially when you look at the NES library and you see all the garbage that was piled onto that. You can look at Star Wars and say, okay, this is at least a competent game. It's playable, and I think it's even more than that. I think it's good, but the nostalgia brings it up to another level for me. Growing up, of course, I was into Star Wars. How could I not be into Star Wars? And I loved movie-based games. So if you took a movie, I always wanted to play the game, and you're gonna see that on this list even more. Even if the game was going to be bad, I had to force myself to like it, and I think I tricked myself into thinking it's one of the best NES games, and it may not be, but for me it is. Makes no sense, but I like it. It is a frustrating game, it is a hard game. I will play up to a certain point. Once I get to the Death Star, forget about it. The game becomes borderline impossible. First of all, you have to figure out where the hell you have to go, and that's extremely hard because for some reason these designers of this Death Star decided that spikes and gravitational wells and bottomless pits were the way to go. How the stormtroopers get to the restroom, I'll never know. But I've never gotten past this part of the game. But despite that, I still have a special place in my heart for it, and I gotta put it on my top list. I'm Batman. As I said, I'm a sucker for movie-based games on the NES because I gravitated towards those as a kid. But fortunately for me, this was made by Sunsoft and not LJN, so it's not only competent and playable, but fun as well. Anybody who doesn't like this game, I seriously wonder what is wrong with their head meat. The weapons, the jumping mechanics, it's just fun to jump onto a wall and then into another wall. And once you get good at that, you can really get good at the game. People have always said that this game was hard, and I've seen it on top 10 hardest game lists. And sure, the Joker is just extremely difficult, but up until that, it's a really forgiving and easy game. Every time you die, you get to keep your weapons. It's got unlimited continues. It's like, to me, if a game has unlimited continues, it's not hard. If it has limited continues and you can't get to those later stages, Battletoads, okay, I get it. But for something like Batman, unlimited continues, that's no excuse for you to not, at some point in your life, beat the game. The music is amazing, the graphics are gritty and perfect. Bosses are fun. I love a good boss fight. I've always loved boss fights. That's probably boss fights are my favorite thing about most games. If it's a good boss fight, especially like in the Mega Man series, I absolutely just eat that up. And I like the boss fights on Batman. They're pretty easy. Honestly, you just come in and just spam them with punches or boomerangs and batarangs, and they usually die really quick. They're actually, you know what? They're pretty easy. But until you get to the Joker, and then it's just like a lot of blind luck. But Batman is definitely, now we're getting into really good stuff, the really good stuff here. Batman, it's a good. Most gamers like me who are going through midlife crises, they all have the same story about this game. It was like nothing they had ever seen before, and that's Super Mario Brothers. If there's one game I can say I absolutely obsessed over the most growing up, it was this game, because it was a while before we ended up getting our NES. My grandfather gave us our NES, but it had been out for a good 2 years at least, and so I was being tortured by my friends being able to play Super Mario Brothers, and I couldn't. I mean, sure, I got the Atari ST, which is awesome, but it was no Super Mario Brothers, and no matter what I had put in front of me, I just couldn't escape the just overwhelming desire to play Super Mario Brothers. My good friends that lived across the street, they were from Laos, and for whatever reason, they always got these amazing games. They would be playing something like Castlevania or Contra or something. I'd be like, guys, can we put in Super Mario Brothers? And they'd be like, no, we already beat that. What's wrong with you? This is like the year 1987. Who plays Super Mario Brothers anymore? And I'm just like, oh man, I was so behind the curve with that. But man, when I got my hands on it for the first time, it was like an all new world. And again, everybody has the same story, because most guys like me, women too, they play video games. They started off on Atari and a television. It was just one screen, here it is. But this was just unimaginable. And it was just like nothing else. And I'm not gonna go too much into it in too much more detail, because you know, you're sitting there watching right now, you know exactly what I'm talking about, and you're sitting there and you're shaking your head and you're like, he's right, motherfucker's right. Oh, we got some good games on this list, and coming in at number 11 is Metal Storm. Now, I was never a huge fan of mechs and Macross and all that weird stuff. I loved Metal Storm. You're a giant mech and you're going around and you're destroying other robots. It's perfect. It's a side scroller. It's an action platformer. But the gimmick in this one, and it's a good gimmick, is you can switch gravity. So in the game, as you're traversing the stages, you flip a switch, you go up to the ceiling, and then you can hit the button again and go down to the floor. I'm very bad at describing this, but I'm sure you've played it. Anyway, this really makes for some interesting ways to get through the stages. If you're not good at flipping that gravity, you're gonna get your ass handed to you on that final boss. Now, this game, pretty much like everything else on my list, I did rent it back when I was a wee bit Billy. So I can definitely say that nostalgia does play a part in this, but I can honestly also say that this game is great, and it's not just clouded by nostalgia glasses. It's a classic, and generally speaking, most people are probably going to say this is one of the better NES games out there. And I know somebody's typing right now, Metal Storm is not that good. But as you're saying it in your head, you're like, well, I'm full of shit, but I'm going to type it anyway. All right, so number one on the first video of this two-part series, which makes it number 11. That's kind of anticlimactic, I know. And that's Super C. Super C! Super C took everything that Contra did and it one-upped it. It made it even more awesome, which is amazing because Contra is amazing. If it's one thing that people hated about Contra 1, I assume, was the first-person stages. Those are kind of annoying. I'm kind of indifferent on them. But the great thing about Super C is they took those, shoved them up their asses, and gave us something even better. And that was Overhead. But to me, these stages are much, much, much more fun than the first-person stages of Contra 1. We got the same great weapons, we got amazing music and graphics again. The only thing that sucks about Super C is that it was never followed up by a third game, a real Contra game. And I don't know why that even merits talking about, because that has nothing to do with Super C. Super C is great, and I hope that if you don't have a place in your heart for Super C, after seeing this list, you will Super C the reason to have Super C on your list as well. See what I did there? Alright, so that's all for this video. I definitely want to cut this up into two, because otherwise it'll probably be about 25 minutes and the retention rate and algorithms or YouTube will be like all garbage. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you, I don't know, you probably know about all the games that I listed on here, but if you're not familiar with them, or you kind of saw something that piqued your interest a little bit, go check it out, go give it a try. Definitely let me know in the comment section how my list absolutely blows and how yours is better, and tell me what your favorite games. Let's go for top 11. Since this video is a top 11 to 20, let's do the same. Give me your top 11 to 20 NES games of all time. That's your homework. Yeah, you're watching a video and you're getting homework. You're back in school. And I'm the teacher. Oh, look at this, you made it to the end screen. Looks like you have a pretty decent attention span. While you're here, I might introduce you to a few things that you should know on YouTube. Because of the algorithm on YouTube and how stupid it is, you need to hit this little bell notification to be extra subscribed for whatever reason. If you want to